Don't touch her with those hands." The words sliced through the air like a knife. Sharp, cold, humiliating. Aaliyah Moore stood frozen, her hand still holding the cupcake she had just picked up from the floor. Her brown eyes flicked up, meeting the icy stare of Clara Vanderbilt, flawless in her designer coat, sunglasses perched like a crown of entitlement. Across the upscale cafe in Manhattan, murmurs rose. Forks clinked nervously against plates. No one moved, no one spoke. Clara sneered, brushing a strand of platinum hair behind her ear. "People like you don't belong around children like her," she added, loud enough for the entire room to hear. It wasn't the first time Aaliyah had been spoken to like this. But it never got easier. Her chest tightened as heat flushed through her cheeks. Her voice caught in her throat, stuck somewhere between pride and pain. She glanced at the little girl beside her, Grace. 6 years old, blonde curls, big blue eyes, now wide with confusion. Grace had dropped her cupcake by accident, and Aaliyah, the waitress, had bent down instinctively to help. But in Clara's world, kindness had color codes, and Aaliyah had crossed an invisible line. "I was just," Aaliyah began softly, but Clara cut her off. "I said don't touch her." Clara's tone sharpened, commanding the attention of every patron. "You don't get to decide what's appropriate." The door chimed open. A tall man stepped inside, clean-cut, in a custom Navy suit. Lucas Hamilton, CEO of Hamilton Tech, Grace's father. He paused at the scene. The silence was deafening. Clara immediately switched tones. She was being rude. She grabbed Grace's arm and— "That's not true," Grace interrupted, voice small but clear. "She was helping me. She's nice." Lucas looked from Grace to Clara, then to Aaliyah, who still held the cupcake like evidence of her humanity. And in that moment, something shifted. This is not just a cafe. It's not just a spilled dessert. This is the beginning of something bigger, a truth that refuses to be silenced, a moment that demands to be seen. Because behind every smile Aaliyah gives, there's a storm she's hiding. And this is her black story, a story of dignity, pain, courage, and hidden worth. At Hidden Worth, we believe stories like Aaliyah's deserve to be told, not just watched. If this moment made you feel something, don't just scroll, tap subscribe. Stay for what comes next. Because this isn't just her story, it could be yours. Long before that morning in the cafe, Aaliyah Moore had already learned how the world sees her, not through her kindness, not through her smile, but through the color of her skin. She was born in Newark, New Jersey, to a single mother who worked 2 jobs, one at a laundromat, the other cleaning offices at night. Her father was never in the picture, just a name on a birth certificate that no one spoke of. Life wasn't easy, but her mother made it warm. They didn't have much, but they had each other. Until one night, her mother came home with a cough. Within weeks, it turned into something more serious. When they finally made it to a hospital, they were turned away not for lack of illness, but lack of insurance. And maybe, just maybe, because of the neighborhood their address was in. Aaliyah was only 7 when she watched the ambulance drive away empty, leaving behind the woman who gave her life. After that, her grandmother, Miss Thelma, took her in, a pillar of grace and grit. Thelma raised Aaliyah with discipline, dignity, and love rooted in faith and fairness. Thelma believed in showing up early, speaking the truth, and never letting the world harden your heart. She worked nights, sewing clothes by hand, cooking meals for neighbors, and volunteering at church. Somehow, she made every dollar stretch and every meal feel like a feast. In school, Aaliyah was quiet but brilliant. She read everything from biographies of civil rights leaders to novels about women who changed their world with little more than courage and conviction. Teachers loved her. Some classmates mocked her for being too smart, but she never let it dim her light. She believed education was the way out, the way forward. She got into Rutgers on a partial scholarship. Her dream was to become a teacher, the kind who looked like her, sounded like her, and made kids feel seen. But life, as it often does, had other plans. When Miss Thelma was diagnosed with cancer, everything stopped. Treatments were expensive, insurance covered barely enough. Aaliyah dropped out after her sophomore year to work full-time. She waited tables, cleaned hotel rooms, did anything she could. She held her grandmother's hand through chemo, rubbed her back during long nights of nausea, whispered prayers when pain made words impossible. When Thelma passed, Aaliyah was 22 and alone in the world. She packed up 2 suitcases and moved to New York City, chasing a job and a new beginning. She landed a server position at Loon and Bean, a chic cafe nestled near Central Park. The kind of place where lattes came with foam art and customers came dressed in designer shoes. The job paid well, at least by hourly standards. But the price wasn't just time and energy. It was dignity, chipped away day by day by the way people looked at her or didn't. Some customers treated her like air, others like an inconvenience. She was called sweetie, you people, and girl, more times than she could count. Her name tag said Aaliyah, but they never bothered to read it. She learned how to smile through insults, how to say, of course, when someone clicked their tongue impatiently, how to nod when a customer said, you speak so well for someone like you. Sometimes, she cried in the restroom between shifts, not out of weakness, but exhaustion from carrying the weight of being polite to people who didn't think she deserved the same. And yet, she never lost her softness. After work, she often walked to the public library, reading books about child psychology, curriculum development, early education. The dream of teaching still burned inside her, quietly but fiercely. She believed her story wasn't meant to end in someone else's shadow. So that morning, when Grace, a little blonde girl with sad eyes, dropped her cupcake, Aaliyah bent down without hesitation. Not because it was her job, but because it was who she was. But Clara didn't see her kindness. She didn't see the girl who survived grief, who sacrificed her future for family, who smiled at strangers who barely looked her way. She saw a black woman in an apron, and she thought that was all there was to see. What Clara didn't know, what no one in that cafe could possibly understand, was that Aaliyah had walked through fire and come out still glowing. That kindness wasn't her weakness. It was her armor. This wasn't where her story ended. It was just the chapter where everything began to change. From the outside, Clara Vanderbilt was perfection. Tall, statuesque, with cheekbones that could cut glass and eyes as icy blue as the winter sky over Manhattan. Her Instagram fed you carefully curated snapshots of luxury sunsets in Santorini, spa days in Bali, charity galas in Tribeca, a fashion icon, a former runway model, a fixture in Manhattan's high society. But behind the filtered photos and designer dresses was a woman whose beauty was skin deep and whose heart had long gone cold. Clara wasn't always like this, or at least that's what she told herself. Born in Connecticut to a wealthy family, she was raised to believe certain things. Some people lead, others follow. Money meant power, and appearances were everything. Her parents didn't teach kindness, they taught control. Empathy wasn't encouraged. It was seen as weakness. The world was there to be shaped in her image, and anyone who didn't fit was pushed aside. In high school, she learned quickly that charm could open doors, and cruelty could keep them closed behind her. She wasn't just admired, she was feared, and she liked it that way. By the time she was 25, Clara had modeled in Milan, dated a tech billionaire, and landed her own skincare brand partnership. But what she wanted more than anything, more than fame, more than money, was status. Permanent status. That's when she met Lucas Hamilton. It was at a rooftop fundraiser in the city. Lucas was magnetic, quiet confidence, crisp suit, clean jawline, a self-made tech CEO, widowed, with a daughter, powerful, respected, untouchable. Clara saw a future in him, one that came with access, security, and a name people would never forget. But there was a catch. That little girl, Grace. From the beginning, Clara knew Lucas's daughter was an obstacle. The child didn't speak much, didn't laugh easily. She clung to her routines, her crayons, her silence. And worst of all, she had her father's heart. Clara tried, in the beginning. She brought gifts, learned Grace's food preferences, sat beside her during movies. But Grace never warmed up. She wouldn't smile for photos, wouldn't call her anything but her. Over time, Clara stopped pretending. When Lucas was home, she played the role attentive, affectionate, gentle. But when he was gone, she didn't hide her disdain. She criticized Grace's clothes, rolled her eyes when she talked about her drawings, and dismissed her feelings as baby nonsense. "You're not the only one with needs, you know," she once told Grace, coldly, when the girl asked for a bedtime story. Clara believed the child needed to be toughened up. She justified her coldness as teaching boundaries. But the truth was simpler. She was jealous. Jealous of a 6-year-old girl. Jealous of the way Lucas lit up when Grace entered the room, of how his voice softened when he talked about her, of the pictures of his late wife he still kept on his nightstand, a woman Clara could never replace. And in that jealousy, Clara found cruelty. She started micromanaging the house staff, snapping at the nanny, firing a housekeeper over a misplaced toy. The one thing she couldn't control was the bond between Lucas and Grace, fragile, yes, but still intact. So when Aaliyah entered the picture that day in the cafe, Clara's instincts flared. It wasn't just that Aaliyah was kind, it was that Grace responded to her. Within minutes, Clara saw something she couldn't stand: connection. The little girl smiled. She talked. She reached for Aaliyah's hand. And Clara couldn't have that. It wasn't just a matter of race, though, that was part of it. Clara had grown up in a world where black women were service workers, not equals. Where their presence was tolerated only when convenient and never welcomed at the table. To her, Aaliyah represented everything she wanted erased, a reminder that kindness didn't need money, that love could be earned without beauty, that dignity didn't wear Prada. So she did what she always did when threatened. She struck first. Don't touch her with those hands. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a weapon, delivered with precision, designed to shame. Because Clara didn't want Aaliyah fired. She wanted her erased. Grace Hamilton had everything a child could ever want, at least, according to anyone looking in from the outside. A nursery that looked like it belonged in a museum. Ceiling-high shelves filled with plush animals that had never been touched. Walls painted in soft blues and silvers, with handcrafted constellations glowing faintly in the dark. Her bedroom had a view of Central Park, a playroom bigger than some New Yorkers' apartments, and a walk-in closet filled with tiny versions of runway fashion. But none of it mattered. Because what Grace really wanted wasn't something you could buy. It wasn't wrapped in pink ribbon or delivered by private courier. She wanted to be seen. She wanted her dad to look up from his laptop when she walked into the room. She wanted to be tucked in at night by someone who knew which book made her giggle and which one made her cry. She wanted someone to ask about the fox in her sketchbook, the one with the blue scarf and secret name only she knew. But instead, Grace got routines. Wake up, tutor, practice piano, eat lunch, art class, playtime, dinner, bed, repeat. Her nannies were always pleasant, always smiling, always rotating. Just when she'd start to feel safe with one, they'd disappear. Moving on, they'd say. Found something new. The only person who stayed was the housekeeper, Maria, who didn't speak much English, but always left warm milk by her bed and kissed her forehead when she thought Grace was asleep. But it wasn't the same. Her dad, Lucas, loved her, she knew that. But he was like a snow globe version of a father, perfect from far away, unreachable behind glass. When he did come home early, he brought gifts, dolls from Tokyo, music boxes from Vienna, toys she never asked for. He thought love came in boxes, in rare things wrapped in velvet. But what she wanted couldn't be unwrapped. Then came Clara. Clara was beautiful, too beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made people stop mid-sentence, mid-breath. She wore heels that clicked loudly on marble floors, smelled like expensive perfume, and always seemed slightly annoyed. Grace tried to like her. She did what kids do when they want to be liked. She tried to be smaller. She said please. She ate what was served. She didn't complain, even when Clara brushed her hair too hard or told her to act more like a lady. But Clara never looked at her like someone who mattered. Only like someone who had to be tolerated. Worse, Clara was clever when it came to Lucas. In front of him, she smiled. She bent down to hug Grace, praised her drawings, used a sweet voice. But as soon as he left the room, her expression turned flat. Her voice sharpened. You don't need to talk so much. Don't make that face. It's not cute. Your dad is busy. Don't make things harder for him. Grace began to fold into herself. She started sleeping with the covers pulled tight around her face, stopped talking at the dinner table, stopped asking questions. Even her drawings changed. The animals she used to give names and homes now stood in empty fields, staring out at nothing. Then came the cafe. Grace remembered the smell of fresh bread and caramel syrup, the warm air, the gentle buzz of morning voices. She'd been looking forward to the cupcake all week. Clara didn't usually let her have sweets, but this was a special occasion, Clara said, which probably meant Clara needed Lucas to say yes to something later. And then it happened. The cupcake slipped from her hands, tumbled frosting first to the ground. Panic hit her like a wave. Her heart thudded. Clara would be furious. She knew that look, the way her mouth tightened when something embarrassed her in public. But before Clara could react, someone knelt down. Not a staff member, not someone pretending. A woman, brown skin, soft smile, gentle hands. "It's okay," she said. "Happens to the best of us." Her voice was like honey and calm. And for the first time in as long as Grace could remember, she felt safe. Then Clara's voice broke through the moment like a slap. "Don't touch her with those hands." The shame, the sting. Grace looked between them, the stranger who showed her kindness and the woman who was supposed to protect her. That night, back in her room, she drew something new. A little girl and a woman sitting under a tree. The girl was laughing. The woman was smiling, reading a book. They were surrounded by sunlight, and the animals from Grace's dreams had returned, sitting close, listening, as if they belonged. She titled the drawing, "My Real Friend." Lucas Hamilton didn't set out to be an absent father. In fact, when he first held Grace in his arms, just minutes after she was born, he made a silent promise, the kind a man makes when he believes love alone can protect a child from the world. "I've got you," he whispered, cradling her tiny body against his chest. "I'll always have you." But promises made in the soft light of a delivery room don't always survive the storm. Lucas had always been ambitious. From the time he was 16, building rudimentary code on a hand-me-down laptop in his parents' basement, he dreamed of building something big, something lasting. And he did. By 30, he was the founder of a tech empire, hailed as one of the brightest minds in artificial intelligence. Forbes, TechCrunch, TED Talks, you name it, he'd done it. But nothing had prepared him for loss. When his wife, Lauren, was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease, he threw himself into research, treatments, second opinions. He flew in specialists from other countries. He poured money into trials, therapies, anything that might buy time. But in the end, nothing could stop what was already written. She passed away quietly one rainy morning, her hand in his. Grace was 2 years old. Lucas's grief didn't come in tears. It came in spreadsheets, in 12-hour workdays, in endless meetings and sleepless nights. He didn't cry, he calculated. He organized. He buried himself so deeply in his company that he forgot how to come up for air. At first, he told himself it was temporary, just a way to cope, a distraction. But days turned into weeks, weeks into years. He didn't mean to leave Grace behind, not emotionally, not spiritually. He was there for every doctor's appointment, every school enrollment, every financial decision, but he wasn't really there. He'd kiss her goodnight after she'd already fallen asleep. He'd nod absently when she showed him a drawing. He'd respond with, "That's great, sweetheart," before even looking. He hired the best nannies, the most qualified tutors, bought her a baby grand piano when she mentioned liking music, but he never noticed that she stopped playing it. He never saw how her eyes stopped lighting up when he walked into the room. Then came Clara. Clara was elegant, polished, effortless in social settings. Lucas thought she might be what Grace needed, a maternal presence, a woman with grace and poise. And maybe, selfishly, he wanted someone who made him feel like a man again, not just a machine. Clara said the right things, smiled in public, acted warm, but Lucas never paid attention to the subtle shifts in his daughter's posture, the way she grew quieter around her. He chalked it up to personality differences, growing pains. He didn't see the damage. Until that morning in the cafe. Lucas had arrived late, caught in traffic, juggling a call, thinking he was just meeting Clara and Grace for brunch. But what he walked into, the tone in Clara's voice, the way Aaliyah stood frozen, the look in Grace's eyes, it snapped something inside him. "Don't touch her with those hands." Clara's voice rang in his ears long after the words faded. He had never heard that side of her before. Or maybe he had, and chosen not to listen. For the first time in a long while, he looked at his daughter. Really looked. Grace wasn't just quiet, she was retreating, shrinking. And the only time she had opened her mouth that morning was to defend someone else, someone she had just met, but already trusted more than anyone in that room. She was helping me. She's nice. Lucas didn't know much anymore, but he knew this. Children don't lie when they feel safe. And Grace had felt safe with the waitress. That realization hit him like a punch. He had failed. Not because he didn't love her, but because he thought love was enough without presence, without attention, without truly knowing the little girl who lived under his roof. Lucas Hamilton had built empires, conquered markets, moved mountains of money and influence. But in the quiet spaces of his own home, he had missed the one thing that mattered most. His daughter. It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday morning. The sky over Central Park was painted in soft blues and cotton cloud whites. The kind of morning where the city felt almost peaceful, where kids laughed near the duck pond, joggers passed with earbuds in, and street musicians played soft jazz on corners dusted with fallen leaves. Lucas had promised Grace a walk, just the two of them. It had been his idea, an attempt to reconnect, to do something ordinary after the chaos of the cafe incident. He hadn't stopped thinking about Aaliyah, or the look in Grace's eyes when she stood beside her, or the chill in Clara's voice that made him feel like a stranger in his own life. So he canceled his meetings, left his phone in the car, and held Grace's hand as they stepped into the park. At first, it felt right. Grace was quiet, as always, but she stayed close. She pointed out a squirrel. He told her about the time he'd chased one as a kid. They both laughed, soft, real. For a second, he let himself believe that maybe they could start over. Maybe it wasn't too late. They reached a bench near a carousel. He bought her a pretzel, warm and soft, and they sat together watching other children run in dizzying circles. Grace didn't ask to ride, she just watched. And that's when his phone buzzed. He tried to ignore it. He really did. But old habits don't die quietly. It buzzed again. A third time. "I'll be right back, sweetheart," he said, rising from the bench. "Just going to take this over there. Stay right here, okay?" Grace nodded. Her mouth was full of pretzel. She didn't speak, just waved a tiny hand. Lucas walked maybe 30 steps too far. When he turned around, she was gone. At first, he thought she was hiding playing a game. He called her name, calm but firm. "Grace." "Come on now, not funny." No response. He walked around the bench. Nothing. Looked behind the trees. Nothing. Panic began to slip in, uninvited. "Grace." Louder this time. He started to jog. Asked a couple if they'd seen a little girl in a blue coat. They shook their heads. She was gone. Lucas's heart pounded against his ribs like a warning bell. A father's worst fear bleeding into reality. He scanned every direction, paths, playgrounds, vendors. The carousel spun in lazy circles behind him, mocking him with its calm. He ran, to the nearest officer. "My daughter's missing. 6 years old. Blonde hair, blue jacket. Her name is Grace." The officer's face changed instantly. Radio clicked. Backup called. The park turned into a search zone within minutes. But for Lucas, every second was a lifetime. In his mind, he replayed every moment, her little face, the way she held his hand, the way she said so little but felt so much. How could he have left her, even for a minute? Meanwhile, Grace was only 2 blocks away. She hadn't meant to leave, not really. She just saw something, a balloon stand near the edge of the park, blue and silver balloons like the ones in her dreams. She thought she'd walk over, look, come right back. But when she turned around, her dad wasn't there. She waited, for what felt like forever. Then she panicked. So she walked, not far, just down a path, but one turn became 2, and the people around her were tall and fast and loud. She couldn't see over shoulders, couldn't hear her name. And just like that, she was lost. Tears welled up but didn't fall. She clutched her drawing pad, the one she always kept in her little backpack, and sat on the edge of a bench, hugging it like armor. She whispered to herself, "He'll come. He's coming." But minutes passed, and no one came. Then a voice. Not her father's. Softer. Familiar. Aaliyah? Grace blinked. Aaliyah knelt in front of her, face full of concern. Hey baby girl, what are you doing here alone? Grace couldn't speak, just leapt forward and wrapped her arms around her neck. Aaliyah held her close. It's okay, I got you, I got you. Lucas Hamilton had never run so fast in his life. Not in high school, when he ran track. Not in college, when he sprinted to job interviews. Not in airports, chasing last-minute flights to Tokyo or San Francisco or Berlin. Nothing compared to the desperation that surged through his legs as he darted through Central Park, screaming his daughter's name. Grace. His voice cracked, his throat was raw. Every possible nightmare played out in his head like a horror reel. What if someone had taken her? What if she wandered into traffic? What if this was the moment everything truly fell apart? He blamed himself, and not just for turning his back for 30 seconds. This was bigger, deeper, years in the making. He had missed birthdays, school plays, the questions she never asked because she knew he wouldn't answer. Grace. He reached the edge of the playground, eyes scanning, heart pounding. Then someone caught his eye. A woman kneeling beside a small figure in a blue coat. It took a second for his brain to process what he was seeing. Then it hit him like a wave. Aaliyah. There she was, the same woman Clara had humiliated in the cafe just days ago. The woman who'd knelt beside Grace with kindness in her eyes and dignity in her posture. The woman who, in that brief moment, had seen Grace more clearly than he ever had. And Grace was in her arms. Not crying, not panicking, but safe, calm, hugging Aaliyah like she belonged there. Lucas slowed to a stop, stunned. His knees almost buckled. His heart, which had been thrashing like a drum, suddenly dropped to silence. He felt dizzy, not from the run, but from the emotion rising in his chest. Aaliyah looked up and met his eyes. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't have to. Her arms were wrapped protectively around his daughter. Her face was soft but alert, like someone who had been in this position before, holding broken things and helping them feel whole again. She's okay, Aaliyah said, gently. She was just lost. I found her near the fountain. Lucas dropped to his knees beside them, his eyes scanning Grace's face for injury, for fear. But she didn't seem hurt, just shaken, and clinging to Aaliyah like she was the only anchor in a world that had spun too fast. Lucas reached out. Grace. At first, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned her head. He saw it, the flicker of confusion in her eyes. Relief. Yes. But also something else. Hesitation. And that's when it hit him again. She hadn't run to him, she'd run to Aaliyah. Lucas swallowed hard. His voice came out in a whisper. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if... His voice broke. He couldn't finish the sentence. Aaliyah nodded once. Not out of pride, not out of satisfaction, but understanding. Deep, heavy, human understanding. You should hold her, she said softly, easing Grace toward him. She needs you. Lucas opened his arms. Grace leaned in, slowly, like she wasn't sure if it was okay. Then suddenly, she collapsed into him, all warmth and tears and tiny arms around his neck. I was scared, she whispered. I know, sweetheart, I know, Lucas murmured. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have walked away. I'm here now, I promise. They stayed like that for a long moment. And Aaliyah? She just stood quietly, hands folded in front of her, ready to step away, to let father and daughter have their moment. But Lucas didn't let her. He stood up, holding Grace, and looked at Aaliyah, with eyes no longer clouded by distraction, or pride, or habit. I need to make this right, he said. You saved her. You were there when I wasn't. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't have to, she replied. But Lucas shook his head. Yes, I do. Not just for this. For what happened at the cafe. For what I didn't say. For what I let happen in front of my daughter. Aaliyah looked away, humbled, but Lucas stepped closer. I want Grace around people who see her, who care, who treat others with decency, no matter what. He paused. Would you have dinner with us? Just dinner. Nothing weird. Just, thank you. Aaliyah smiled, small, warm, hesitant. "We'll see," she said. "Let's just get her home first." And for the first time, Lucas exhaled. Not because the crisis was over, but because maybe, just maybe, the healing had begun. Clara Vanderbilt was not used to being ignored. She wasn't used to being second, or questioned, or replaced. She had crafted her entire identity around power, soft power, yes, but power nonetheless. A glance that could silence a room, a smile that concealed sharpened knives, a lifestyle curated to perfection. And now, it was slipping. Lucas had changed. He came home earlier, looked her in the eye with questions instead of blind trust. He wasn't cold, not yet, but he was present. And Clara could feel it like a temperature drop in the room. The final straw came when he canceled their dinner reservation at Maison de Lune, her favorite restaurant. No explanation, no apology. Just a calm, "We're staying in tonight." Grace had a long day. Clara didn't say much, but inside, she boiled. And she knew exactly where it started. That waitress. That woman. The one from the cafe. The one who dared to comfort Grace. The one who dared to stand in her presence and not shrink. The one Lucas had thanked personally, sincerely, like she was more than a server with soft hands and a sad story. Clara waited, quietly, planning. Then, one afternoon, she saw her chance. Lucas had agreed to meet Aaliyah for a brief follow-up, to thank her again, to offer support, maybe even to ask if she'd be willing to consider a role as Grace's part-time caretaker. It was supposed to be informal, just a meeting in a quiet tea shop. But Clara wasn't about to sit this one out. She showed up unannounced, uninvited. Draped in designer silk, every curl in place, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses, she walked into the tea shop like it was a red carpet. Aaliyah was seated near the window, wearing simple clothes, her curls pulled back, sipping a cup of chamomile like she had every right to be there. Clara hated her instantly. She didn't greet Lucas, didn't ask to join. She simply pulled out a chair and sat down, folding one leg over the other with theatrical precision. Lucas blinked. "Clara, what are you?" "I was in the neighborhood," she interrupted. "Figured I'd stop by." Aaliyah sat up straighter, visibly uncomfortable. But she didn't move. Clara turned to her, smile thin as paper. "Well, if it isn't our favorite barista." Aaliyah remained calm. "Good to see you again." Quote, "Oh, I'm sure it is," Clara said, tilting her head. "You've certainly made an impression. Lucas won't stop talking about you. And Grace, she's obsessed. Isn't that adorable?" Lucas started to interject, but Clara leaned in, voice now low and venomous. "Tell me, Aaliyah, what's your plan? Huh? Win the kid's heart, then what? Latch on to daddy? Move from waitress to, what, stepmom?" "Clara," Lucas warned, "stop." But she didn't. "You think this is some fairy tale? That your sad little life gives you moral superiority? Let me remind you, you serve coffee. That's your lane, and I'd appreciate it if you stayed in it." Aaliyah didn't flinch, didn't cry, but the room went still. People were watching now, heads turned, eyes widened. Lucas stood. "Clara, enough." She turned to him, eyes blazing. "You can't be serious. You're choosing her over me? Over us?" Lucas didn't yell. His voice was low, but firm. "I'm choosing Grace, and I'm choosing people who treat others with decency." Clara laughed. Sharp, bitter. "She's using you. Can't you see it? She's a nobody, from nowhere. Don't be fooled by the humble act." But Lucas had heard enough. He stepped between them, shielding Aaliyah with his body, not because she needed protection, but because she deserved it. "You need to leave," he said. Clara stood there, stunned. The room was silent, except for the quiet clink of a spoon against porcelain. Then, without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out. Lucas turned to Aaliyah. She looked composed, but her hands trembled slightly. "I'm sorry," he said. She was out of line. Aaliyah shook her head. "I've heard worse, from better-dressed people." And they both smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was honest. In that moment, something shifted. Not in romance, not yet, but in truth. Lucas saw Aaliyah for who she was. and for the first time, someone truly stood up for her. It started with a blurry photo. A shot taken through the cafe window, angled just right to capture Aaliyah sitting beside Lucas Hamilton, her hand resting gently on Grace's back as the little girl laughed into her lap. It was innocent. Beautiful, even. But in the wrong hands, beauty becomes a weapon. Someone posted it to a local gossip forum, a side channel for people who followed the lives of New York's elite. The caption read, CEO Lucas Hamilton's new mystery woman seen cuddling with his daughter at Central Park Cafe. At first, it got a few likes, some heart emojis, curious questions. Then came the trolls. Is that the same girl from the coffee shop on 83rd? Waitress trying to level up? She probably planned this, single mom energy. Gold digger 101. Doesn't she know her place? And then, it got worse. Someone recognized Aaliyah. They posted a screenshot of her cafe's website, her name listed under team members. Then came her old Instagram photos, her college graduation, a post about Black literature she once wrote. Suddenly, strangers were dissecting her life like it was a crime scene. Within hours, number Aaliyah the barista was trending, and not in a good way. Memes, mockery, racial slurs disguised as jokes, TikToks reenacting the cafe scene with fake ghetto accents. Her LinkedIn was flooded with fake reviews. The cafe began receiving calls, some demanding she be fired for inappropriate behavior, others threatening to boycott the business entirely. Aaliyah was devastated. She'd grown up understanding how the world sometimes worked, how a black woman could be invisible until she became a threat. But nothing prepared her for being the center of this kind of hate. Not because of something she did wrong, but because she dared to care, dared to show compassion to a child, dared to sit at a table she wasn't invited to, at least not by the world's rules. Her phone buzzed nonstop, her inbox flooded with messages, some supportive, but most venomous. You belong behind the counter, not at the table. Stop trying to play house. Bet you're trying to trap him with the kid. She's not your daughter. Stay in your lane. She deleted the apps, turned off her phone, stayed home. But the damage was already done. Her manager at the cafe called, nervous. I'm not saying you're in trouble, he said, trying to sound gentle. But the owners are getting cold feet. We're a family-friendly brand. You know how at Island. I was helping a child, she replied. That's all I did. I know, he said, but the internet doesn't care about truth. They care about traffic. She was placed on indefinite leave until things calmed down. She sat on her couch, lights off, blinds closed, staring into the quiet. She thought of Grace, of the drawing the little girl had given her after their second meeting, a picture of two girls under a tree, one big, one small, both smiling. On the bottom, in crooked pink crayon, it read, "My real friend." Aaliyah kept it on her fridge. And now, even that felt dangerous. She began to question everything. Had she crossed a line? Had she imagined the connection? Was she foolish to think kindness was enough? Then came the knock. She froze. Another reporter? A neighbor? She opened the door slowly. It was Lucas. He wasn't dressed like a CEO. No suit, no briefcase, just jeans, a sweatshirt, and a face full of exhaustion and something else. Remorse. I saw everything, he said. I'm sorry. I should have seen it coming. I should have protected you. Aaliyah didn't speak. I tried to talk to Clara. I know she started this. Her PR firm leaked the photos. They spun it. They turned you into something you're not. Why? Aaliyah asked, voice shaking. Because you matter to Grace, he said. And people like Clara don't attack people they don't fear. He reached into his pocket and handed her something. A sketch. It was Grace's, another one. This time, it showed three people, Aaliyah, Lucas, and Grace, sitting at a dinner table, smiling. She flipped it over. On the back, in uneven handwriting, "You make me feel like sunshine." Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't have words, just gratitude and pain. Lucas looked at her, not like a savior, not like a man with all the answers, but like someone finally willing to stand beside her. We're not going to let them win, he said. Not this time. It started with a drawing. Not a press release, not a statement, not a carefully curated post from a PR team. Just a child's drawing, photographed with slightly crumpled edges and crayons bleeding outside the lines. 3 figures sat at a dinner table: Aaliyah, Lucas, Grace. In the corner, a yellow sun with a big smile. And at the bottom, in crooked, innocent handwriting, "You make me feel like sunshine." Lucas posted it to his personal Instagram account, an account that rarely saw activity. No caption, no hashtag, just the image. And within hours, the storm began to shift. The comments started cautiously. "Wait, this is the barista everyone's trashing? Hold up, she helped a lost kid, and she's being punished for it? This is what y'all canceled her for?" Then, something remarkable happened. People began digging not to destroy but to understand. They found her old college speech on education equity, a clip of her volunteering at a local food pantry, her senior thesis on systemic bias in media portrayal of women of color. They found warmth, consistency, character. The narrative flipped. Users began calling out the racism in the original posts. Influencers with large followings reshared the drawing and told their audiences, "This woman protected a child. She deserves applause, not harassment." Even a few public figures chimed in. A beloved daytime TV host reposted the story with the caption, "Kindness doesn't have a job title, let's be better." A well-known parenting blogger wrote, "Every kid deserves someone like Aaliyah in their corner, period." "We see you Aaliyah" started trending by nightfall. The cafe issued an apology the next morning. The owners admitted to rushing judgment based on online pressure and publicly offered Aaliyah her job back with a promotion to manager. She declined, but not out of spite. By then, something bigger was happening. News outlets picked up the story. The headline read, "From barista to Braveheart, the woman who stepped up when no one else did." Aaliyah was invited to speak on a morning news show. She almost didn't go, nervous, uncertain, not used to cameras. But Grace's drawing was in her purse, folded carefully, reminding her that sometimes truth needs a voice. She sat on a beige couch under hot lights, looked into the lens, and said, "I didn't do anything extraordinary. I saw a little girl who was scared, and I did what any decent human being should do." The only reason it became a story is because the world doesn't expect women who look like me to be seen as protectors, just servers. But we're more than our uniforms. We're more than a stereotype. The clip went viral. Within 24 hours, her name was being mentioned alongside words like dignity, grace, and modern-day hero. But the most surprising twist came from Grace herself. Lucas shared another photo, this one from their dining room. Grace stood beside a corkboard filled with drawings. All of them featured Aaliyah, reading, laughing, holding hands. Lucas's caption read, "When a child sees you as family, the world should listen." Aaliyah's inbox flooded again, but this time with job offers, mentorship invitations, scholarships, and speaking requests. She wasn't chasing attention. She never had. But the attention had found her. And in the middle of the chaos, Aaliyah did the one thing that defined her most. She went back to the cafe. Not to reclaim her old job, but to sit in the corner booth where she first met Grace. To sip her coffee in peace. To remember that this all started with a moment of quiet care. And that's when the little bell above the door rang. Grace ran in, first drawing in hand, cheeks flushed with excitement. Behind her, Lucas walked in carrying a picnic basket. "Lunch?" he asked. Aaliyah smiled. "Thought you'd never ask." They sat together, not as a headline or a trending topic, but as people, a family, maybe not by blood, but by choice, by kindness, by the moment one stranger chose to kneel down and say, "It's okay," because that's all it took. And the world finally noticed. It had been a week since the tide turned. Aaliyah still wasn't used to the attention. She kept expecting it to fade, for the noise to die down and life to return to the way it was, simple, quiet, behind the counter. But the truth was, everything had changed. And Lucas Hamilton knew it too. He wasn't just a billionaire CEO anymore. He wasn't just a man trying to repair the fractures in his family. He had become, in a strange, unexpected way, a student of humility. Watching Aaliyah handle the firestorm with grace and dignity had changed him. So when he asked her to meet him for dinner, just the two of them, she hesitated. Not because she was afraid of him, but because she knew what was coming. She arrived at the restaurant dressed simply, just as she always did. No makeup, no designer labels, just Aaliyah. Lucas stood as she approached, a habit he still hadn't unlearned from growing up in the South. He pulled out her chair, smiled awkwardly. "Thanks for coming," he said. She nodded. "You said it was important." He cleared his throat. "I'll get straight to it." From his briefcase, he pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. She didn't touch it. "What's this?" "It's an offer," Lucas said. "I had my legal team draft it. Compensation package, benefits, everything. It's yours if you want it." "For what?" "To be Grace's full-time caretaker, not just a nanny. I mean, someone real, consistent, trusted. She needs that, and she already trusts you." Aaliyah looked at the envelope. She didn't open it. "How much is it?" "More than double what the cafe pays you in a year," he said honestly. "You'd have your own space in the penthouse, a driver, health insurance, travel stipend, whatever you need." She smiled not at the offer, but at the way he said it, like he was trying to fix something with money again. "Lucas," she said softly, "I'm not offended. I appreciate this. I know it comes from a good place, but I'm not doing this for money." "I know," he said quickly. "That's why I'm offering it." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the shift. This wasn't a man trying to buy her. It was a man trying not to lose the one thing that finally made sense. She leaned back in her chair, eyes steady. "I'll do it, but not because of the offer. Not because of the perks. I'll do it for Grace. Because she needs someone who won't leave. Someone who sees her." Lucas nodded. "And you won't leave?" "Not unless you tell me to." He exhaled, the weight falling from his shoulders like bricks. "I don't care about the money," she added, "but I care about doing this the right way. Grace is not a transaction. She's not a PR move. She's a little girl who's already been let down too many times. If I step into this, it's not part-time. It's not until something better comes along. I'm in, fully." Lucas's voice caught in his throat. "Thank you." She smiled. "Don't thank me yet." She still eats cookies for breakfast when no one's looking. They both laughed. Dinner passed with easy conversation, not flirtatious, not tense, just real. Two people who'd been through a storm and found each other on the other side. When he dropped her off that night, Grace was waiting by the window. She ran down the hall barefoot, arms wide. "Aaliyah." And in that one moment, with little arms wrapped around her waist, with a home behind her and hope ahead, Aaliyah knew she had made the right choice. No paycheck could buy this. This was something earned. Something real. Change doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes, it whispers quietly, consistently, in the small choices a person makes when no one's watching. For Lucas Hamilton, change began with breakfast. Not the kind delivered by a private chef, plated on porcelain with imported berries, but the kind made in a rush, half-burnt toast and scrambled eggs that clung to the skillet. The kind Grace actually liked. He didn't know how to cook, not really. But that wasn't the point. He showed up, early, before the sun had warmed the penthouse windows, and asked Grace what she wanted. She blinked at him, confused. "You don't have a meeting?" "I moved it," he said. "I'm yours this morning." Just a few weeks ago, Grace wouldn't have known how to respond, but now, she smiled, shy but sincere. "Can I help?" And so they made breakfast together. Messy, imperfect, beautiful. Lucas began to rearrange his life, not around quarterly projections, but around school drop-offs, around bedtime stories, around learning the names of Grace's stuffed animals and remembering which one was scared of thunder. He still worked, of course. He had a company to run, but now he did it with balance, with intention. He handed off responsibilities, delegated meetings, took Zoom calls from the hallway outside Grace's art class instead of from a private jet. He started saying no, something he used to treat like a liability. Now, it became a boundary, a lifeline. And through it all, Aaliyah was there. She didn't hover, didn't intrude. She supported, quietly, like a lighthouse in fog. Steady, present. She gave Lucas space to build the bond himself, but when he faltered, when his instincts slipped back into workaholic habits, she gently nudged him back. "You missed dance class again," she said one evening, handing him Grace's glittery pink shoes. He sighed. "I know. I lost track of time." "Try again tomorrow," she said. She notices, even when she doesn't say anything. And he did. Every day, he tried again. He learned that change wasn't about grand gestures. It was about remembering to ask Grace about her day and actually listening to the answer. It was about staying at the table when she colored, even when the emails piled up. It was about letting her see him make mistakes, and letting her know he was still learning too. One night, he sat on the floor beside her bed, reading from her favorite picture book, the one she used to read alone before Aaliyah came along. Halfway through, she touched his arm. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I like you more now." Lucas swallowed hard. "Oh? Why?" "You smile more, you stay." He almost cried. That night, after she fell asleep, he sat on the balcony with Aaliyah. The city lights stretched below like a map of second chances. "You're good with her," Lucas said, his voice low. "She's easy to love," Aaliyah replied. "You made me better," he said. Aaliyah shook her head. "You made you better. I just reminded you of what you already had." He looked at her, then really looked, and for the first time, he didn't see Aaliyah as the woman who saved his daughter, or the target of online cruelty, or the girl from the cafe. He saw her as part of the life he hadn't known he was building. A life worth showing up for. Lucas started making changes outside the home, too. He instituted a new policy at his company, paid family leave for all employees, not just executives. He began a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities. And quietly, he funded a scholarship under Aaliyah's name for first-generation college students pursuing education or child development. He didn't make a speech, didn't post it on social media. He just did it. Because being a father, a real one, had taught him something success never could. That legacy isn't just what you build, it's who you build it for. And now, for the first time in his life, Lucas Hamilton wasn't just building for himself. He was building for Grace. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic kiss in the rain, no sweeping declaration in a crowded room. The love between Lucas and Aaliyah didn't come loud. It came softly, like spring after a long winter, gentle, persistent, and impossible to ignore. It started with glances. Little moments over breakfast, when Lucas would pour coffee into Aaliyah's mug without asking, already knowing how she liked it. When she'd hand him Grace's backpack with a quiet, "You forgot this," and a smirk that made his chest tighten. It grew in the silences between them, comfortable ones. Late evenings in the kitchen, after Grace was tucked in, when they'd clean together with music playing low in the background. No awkwardness, just rhythm. Two people who had learned to move in sync without even trying. Lucas began to notice things he hadn't before. The way Aaliyah hummed while folding laundry, the way she leaned against the counter with her arms crossed when she was holding something back. The way her eyes sparkled when Grace told a story, even if it made no sense at all. And Aaliyah noticed him too. How he bit his lip when he was focused. How his voice softened around Grace. How he made room for her not just physically, but emotionally. Like she wasn't an employee. Like she belonged. There was one night, in particular, that changed everything. A storm rolled through Manhattan, the kind with thunder that rattles windows and rain that pours like it's trying to wash the city clean. Grace was already asleep, tucked into her fortress of pillows and plush animals. Lucas and Aaliyah sat in the living room, lights dim, rain tapping against the glass. "I used to be afraid of storms," Aaliyah said suddenly. Lucas turned to her. "What changed?" "My mom," she said. "She told me thunder was just the sky talking to itself. Nothing to be afraid of." He smiled. "Sounds like something you'd tell Grace." "Maybe." They were quiet for a moment. Then Lucas said, "You're good at that." "At what?" "Knowing what people need." Aaliyah didn't respond right away. She looked out at the city, at the water streaking the windows. Then she said, "I think we all want to be seen, even kids, especially kids." Lucas looked at her, then really looked. She wasn't just Grace's comfort. She was his anchor, too. the person who held him accountable without judgment, who reminded him of who he wanted to be, not who the world expected him to be. And in that quiet, something unspoken passed between them. He didn't touch her, didn't rush it, but the feeling rooted itself deep. From then on, the smallest things felt different. One morning, Lucas woke up early to pack Grace's lunch, not just a sandwich, but shaped fruit, a little note, just like Aaliyah used to do. When Aaliyah saw it, she smiled in surprise. "You're learning. I have a good teacher." She blushed, looked down. Later that week, Grace caught them laughing in the kitchen. She tilted her head, curious. "Are you two in love?" she asked, point blank, the way only a child could. Lucas and Aaliyah froze, then laughed, then looked at each other and didn't deny it. Because maybe they weren't there yet. But they were getting close. It wasn't about romance in the traditional sense. It wasn't about attraction or drama, or even timing. It was about safety, trust, mutual growth. About how they'd walked through fire, not together at first, but side by the end. It was about how Lucas felt lighter when she was near. And how Aaliyah, for the first time in her life, felt chosen. Not because she was needed, but because she was wanted. Love, for them, didn't arrive like a bang. It grew, steady as breath. And in the spaces where silence used to live, fear, doubt, regret, something new took root. Hope. In the end, the story wasn't about money. It wasn't about the penthouse views or viral headlines or the sharp words of a jealous woman. It was about the moments in between, the quiet ones, the overlooked ones where real change began, where love bloomed, not like lightning, but like morning light spilling slowly into a room. Grace was the thread that pulled everything together. A little girl who had spent so long learning to be small. Learning not to cry too loud or laugh too much. Learning to be easy to forget. And yet, all it took was one person, a stranger, to kneel beside her and say, "It's okay." That's where everything changed. Aaliyah never planned to be a hero. She never woke up thinking she'd rescue a billionaire's daughter or go viral, or be the center of a social media firestorm. She simply followed her instinct, her heart, and treated a child the way every child deserves to be treated. With presence. With patience. With love. Lucas, too, learned what it meant to show up. Not as a provider, or a protector, or a name on a Forbes list, but as a father, as someone who listens, who puts down his phone and picks up his daughter's hand, who stops measuring success in deals closed and starts measuring it in bedtime stories, in "I missed yous," in the sound of Grace laughing freely again. And Clara? She faded into the background. Not because she was defeated, but because cruelty always burns itself out when it meets grace that doesn't flinch. People stopped listening to her, and started listening to Aaliyah, to Grace, to the quiet courage of doing the right thing when no one is watching. 1 year later, the Hamilton home looked different. Not because of furniture or upgrades, but because of joy. The walls were filled with Grace's art. The kitchen buzzed with homemade meals and shared laughter. The balcony bloomed with flowers, Aaliyah's favorite place to sip tea while Lucas read the paper nearby. And in the center of it all was Grace, her heart wide open, her eyes no longer searching the room for someone to stay. She had her people. She was safe, and she knew it. On her birthday, she stood on a stool at the kitchen island, cake crumbs on her cheeks, and made a toast with her juice box held high. "To my real friend," she said, smiling at Aaliyah. "To my daddy, to my family." Lucas and Aaliyah exchanged a glance not of romance, but of shared history, of mutual healing, of everything they had been through, and everything still to come. Because this story, their story, wasn't about dramatic moments or perfect endings. It was about a decision. To see someone. To protect someone. To love someone. No matter what the world says. So here's the lesson, the one that matters most. You don't have to be rich to change someone's life. You don't have to be powerful to make a difference. You don't have to be perfect to be the person someone needs. All you have to do is show up. With kindness, with courage, with a willingness to care, even when it's inconvenient. That's what Aaliyah did. That's what Lucas learned. And that's what Grace will carry with her, always. Because in a world that often moves too fast, filled with noise and judgment and division. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is kneel down beside a child and whisper, "I see you." If this story moved you, share it. Tag someone who needs a reminder of their worth. And don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Worth, where we bring you real, raw, human stories that prove the best parts of life can't be bought. We'll see you in the next one.